Do you still believe that authority is about raising your voice? That seduction is about well-chosen words and trained smiles? Poor in spirit. True strength doesn't shout. It breathes. It enters in silence and transforms the air. A man who still needs to prove something has already lost before he even began. What imposes presence is not the wordiness of a hurried conqueror, but the silence of one who knows what he carries in his chest. If I could shout something in this age of hollow men, it would be, do less, be more. A woman is not attracted by what you flaunt, but by what you can elegantly conceal. Real authority and true seduction are born when you master yourself before trying to master anyone else. If you understand this, comment below with the city from which you're listening. I want to know where there are still men willing to face this mirror without breaking it. The greatest illusion of the modern macho is believing vulnerability is weakness, foolishness. Weakness lies in the fear of being seen, in the rush to appear invincible. A healed wound, when shown with composure, is more powerful than 1,000 muscles flexed in ridiculous display. When a man confesses an old pain and does not tremble in doing so, he shows that the wound exists but no longer rules his soul. That disarms, that attracts, because it reveals maturity, not neediness. When pain is tamed, it becomes a scepter, and the man who wields it with balance governs the woman's emotional realm without saying a word. If this already wounded you, like the video. If not yet, wait. My words will find your camouflaged weakness, and when they do, may it be too late to run. I observe men trying to conquer like nervous salesmen, smiling too much, talking too much, seeking approval like dogs starving for affection. You approach women as if they were puzzles to be deciphered, as if you must prove something in 5 minutes or lose the trophy. What emotional misery is that? A woman is not a prize. She is a mirror, and she returns with savage precision whatever you exude. Neediness, desperation disguised as kindness. The needy conqueror is always exposed. His urgency has a smell, and no woman desires to lie beside someone who begs for approval. What she seeks, even without saying, is someone who doesn't need her to exist. The silent man disturbs. He doesn't reveal his hand. He observes. He weighs the environment like a general calculating the distance before the arrow is loosed. And the curious thing? Everyone senses him even when he says nothing. There is something in his posture, in his calm gaze, in his absence of anxiety, that shames the insecure and excites the sensitive. Real authority doesn't need an audience. Presence is its signature. The man who falls silent at the right moment is not absent. He is dangerous, because his silence is not empty. It is strategy. It is dominance. And every second he does not speak, he builds tension. He plants doubt. And in that abyss between sound and gesture, fascination is born. I tell you, the fool fears silence as the weak fear the mirror. Because in silence there are no tricks, no sound bites. Only you remain, raw, present, inescapable. That is why so many speak too much, because they cannot stand being looked at for long. But the man who silences himself with purpose transforms discomfort into a weapon. His lack of words becomes absolute presence. And the more the woman tries to fill that void with nervousness or humor, the more she surrenders control. Well-used silence is the sharpest sword of the emotionally sovereign man. And if you still depend on noise to be noticed, I'm sorry, you haven't arrived yet. Reveal your pain, only if it no longer dominates you. Unload your weakness, only if it is bound, tamed, caged. Showing vulnerability without being in control of it is like disrobing in the town square and expecting applause. But when you share a scar, without tremor in your voice, without asking for pity, you reverse the game. You show that what could have destroyed you was absorbed, processed, conquered. The empathy that arises from this is not pity, it is admiration. And there is no stronger desire than the desire for someone who has fallen and risen again, looking straight into your eyes. Want to connect with a woman? Then stop trying to save her. She doesn't want an emotional firefighter. She wants someone who sees her whole, even when she's in pieces. Most men, upon hearing a woman's pain, rush to fix it as if his presence were a magical bandage. That is not strength, it is anxiety disguised as kindness. True power lies in remaining, in listening, in not fleeing discomfort, because the man who doesn't need to fix anything yet chooses to stay, is the one who doesn't depend on gratitude to be remembered. He doesn't try to invade the castle. He sits outside and waits to be invited in. Do you think she will fall in love with your insistence? Foolishness. Desire does not bow to haste. It kneels before choice. The man who comes from abundance doesn't run, doesn't beg, doesn't exhaust himself. He observes, ponders, chooses. And if he chooses, it is because he saw value, not because he was empty. Neediness has a smell. Worse, it has a taste. A woman senses the trembling touch, the anxious gaze, the compliment heavy with hope. She may even smile, but she will never truly desire what desires her more than itself. Real desire only springs where there is freedom, and the man who knows this becomes a threat and fascination. Patience is the virtue of those who are in no rush to prove their worth. And I ask you, why so much urgency? Because you, modern men, base your self-esteem on the response of a single woman. That is pathetic. A valuable man doesn't run, doesn't beg, doesn't hurry time. He waits, because he knows that what he carries is not common, and what is not common frightens before it attracts. When a man waits without anxiety, he asserts himself. He says with his calm, "I don't need you to choose me, I have already chosen myself." And that, my dear, destabilizes any heart that still has some blood pulsing. Do you want to be unforgettable? Then stop adapting. A woman doesn't remember the man who did everything for her. She remembers the one who did everything for himself, even beside her. In a world of flatterers, the authentic is an affront. He annoys, he disturbs, he forces the woman to question her own mask, and for that, she doesn't forget him. The man who doesn't change his tone of voice to please, who doesn't change his opinion to conquer, who doesn't bend to the emotional climate of whoever stands before him. This man is not loved by everyone, but he is remembered by everyone. You live like extras in the theater of acceptance. You laugh when you don't feel like it, praise what you despise, agree with absurdities just to avoid being alone. But I tell you, better the solitude of a whole man than the company of someone who demands your emotional mutilation. Authenticity has a price, and it is high. It demands silence, rejection, discomfort, but it also delivers something the mediocre will never know: true respect. When you remain faithful to yourself, even at the risk of being misunderstood, you rise above the masses, and the eyes that judged you begin to fear you. It is not brute force that leaves a mark, it is consistency. The world is full of fireworks, men who shine for 5 minutes and then vanish into emptiness. But what remains is what does not waver, what repeats itself without contradiction, what does not need justification. A woman may even test you, provoke you, try to shift your axis, but deep down, she expects you to remain, to not lose yourself in her, because at heart, every woman respects and loves the one she cannot bend, the rock, the constant, the one who remains the same even when everything around tries to reshape him. And here lies the silent tragedy of the modern man. He has unlearned how to remain. Everything in him is attempt, performance, reaction. He molds himself to the woman's gaze like a mirror desperate for a reflection. But I warn you, he who lives for another dies in pieces. An identity that bows for the promise of love becomes a slave to another's desire. And there is no true passion where there is emotional servitude. The man who is worth something doesn't ask, "What does she want from me?" but rather, "What do I continue to be, even when she is gone?" It is in that answer that the key to magnetism lies. Most of you want love, but what you offer is submission disguised as romance. You don't seduce, you plead. You don't expose yourself, you sell yourself. You expect applause for not betraying, for listening, for being different. And I tell you, love that needs a billboard to be noticed is the same that will be forgotten at the next corner. The authentic man loves in silence, touches firmly, listens without fear. He does not ask to be seen, he just is, and that is enough. If the woman notices, great. If not, too bad for her. He did not come to be necessary, he came to be inevitable. The problem is that you confuse presence with noise. You think being present is filling the space with words, opinions, promises. But you don't realize that true presence is dense, not loud. It is felt in the air, not in the ears. A truly present man can spend an entire night beside a woman without saying a word, and she, nonetheless, will remember every second. Because he doesn't try to impose himself, he simply doesn't fade away. His silence has texture, his gaze has weight, and his absence of haste creates a magnetic field where the woman forgets even to pretend. The day you understand that true power is calm, life changes, because the power that shouts is the one not yet convinced of its existence. What needs to prove itself is always the one in doubt, but he who knows what he is just walks, and his calm annoys, because it reveals something intolerable to the world: autonomy. An autonomous man doesn't need an audience, nor an immediate answer, nor constant approval. He can leave in the middle of a conversation and leave a trail that burns for days. He's remembered not because he did much, but because he didn't need to do. And don't be mistaken, the man who chooses silence chooses the other's torture, because when you speak, you relieve. When you remain silent, you reveal. The other writhes, tries to decipher, fills the gaps with insecurity. The woman, accustomed to explanations, justifications, promises, finds herself facing the enigma, and the enigma is aphrodisiac. The silence of the secure man is not absence, it is multiplied presence. It is the unspoken message that echoes louder than any declaration of love. And if you understood this, you no longer need to play games, because you have turned the game around. But beware, silence is not escape, it is control. There is a fine line between the man who falls silent out of cowardice and the one who falls silent out of wisdom. The first fears conflict, the second commands time, and the woman senses the difference. She may not be able to explain it, but she intuits. One withdraws, the other asserts himself. One hides, the other expands without noise. The silence that seduces is the one that chooses the exact moment to break, with a sentence, a glance, a gesture that changes everything. Because it was built not as absence, but as tension. And tension, my dears, is the perfume of desire. You want to be desired, but you fear causing discomfort. You want to be remembered, but act as if you were replaceable. I ask you, how do you expect to be unforgettable if you live like copies? A woman doesn't fall in love with generic kindness. She is fascinated by a presence that challenges, by a gaze that does not beg, by a touch that does not apologize. And the man who understands this stops performing. He doesn't need to learn seduction techniques. He becomes seduction itself, because he does not seek to provoke emotion. He provokes existence. And that, yes, is irresistible. Perhaps you came this far expecting formulas, tips, tricks, but I didn't come to teach you how to conquer anyone. I came to remind you that you are already complete, and that they forgot to tell you. Your presence is sufficient when your soul is in order. Your word matters when it arises from silence, and your choice matters when it doesn't stem from neediness, but from consciousness. Stop chasing. Love like an emotional orphan. Become the kind of man who, upon entering a place, doesn't need to say a word, because everyone already understands that something changed. If you made it this far and haven't fled, perhaps there is something in you that resists domestication, a remnant of wild soul, a fragment of lucidity that hasn't knelt before mediocrity. Cultivate it, protect it, because the world will try to crush every inch of your integrity with promises of love, success, belonging, and you will be tested not by what you gain, but by what you refuse to lose, your essence. Being whole today is an act of war, and the battlefield is inside your chest. If you understood this message, subscribe to the channel, but not for me, for you. Because in this place we do not flatter weakness, we do not nurture victims. Here we speak truths that burn, but liberate. And if you are still here, it is because something inside you refuses to die in silence. So be it. Go into the world as one who owes no explanations, speak little, feel deeply, and walk with the boldness of one who knows. He who masters his own vulnerability masters everything.